What's up, Facebook world, Zoom world? I don't know how you got. I never know how to start these things. I should probably just say hello and not try to be weird or anything like that. So welcome to the Parents Helping Parents live webinar and Zoom meeting. We're glad you're joining us, whether you're joining us on Facebook, whether you're joining us on Zoom. Either way, we are glad that you're here. We're a group of volunteers, parents, grandparents, friends. Really, we're just people who know someone who has dealt with and struggled with substance use disorder in some form. Our mission is really simple: caring parents, offering hope through resources, education, and shared experience. The virtual chapter is a little different than our live in-person meetings. It's streamed here on Facebook and through our private Zoom webinar room to protect your anonymity. So the links for the Zoom webinar room can be found on our website, parentshelpingparents.info, and you can find those on our Facebook page. Remember that if you're watching on Facebook, if you're commenting, if you're asking questions, that stuff is on the internet, and the internet remembers forever. So if you really feel like you want to ask some private questions and that you want to kind of be anonymous, we suggest you do that through the Zoom room. You can ask questions by Facebook chat. You can ask them in Zoom privately to me. You can ask them to everyone in Zoom that's watching. So there's several different ways to interact. We only have one rule here. What's said here is stays here. So please feel free to share, ask those questions. We don't point fingers, we don't judge, we just support. A lot of us have had the same questions in the past, the same experiences, and some of us have been able to find some answers along the way. We try to listen, we try to share our experiences, the things that we've learned on our journeys, and the resources that we've been able to uncover. We have no professional expertise. We have only walked in the shoes of a parent or a loved one. Our mission is limited to providing information, resources, and peer support. This meeting or any outreach of Parents Helping Parents should never be considered a substitute for professional counseling or legal, financial, or medical services, all of which we recommend you seek if they're appropriate for your needs. In addition, we love that we can offer the virtual chapter to families and loved ones who are unable to attend live meetings, whether they live in a community that doesn't have live meetings, or maybe you're laid up with a broken leg. I hope not, but maybe. Whatever it is, we're glad you're here, but we want to encourage you, if at all possible, to connect with one of our local chapters. You can find information about those chapters, parentshelpingparents.info, online. There is no better support than a community of people gathering together to help one another. So during the course of the chapter, you can ask questions. We kind of already covered that. If you would like to be on our undisclosed email list, just comment your email address if you're on Facebook, or comment it in the Zoom room, and we will add you to that. We don't spam you. You just get our quarterly newsletters, and that's it in the email. If you'd like to participate as a volunteer, help with meetings, help procure speakers, get trained to answer our helpline, spread the word about a chapter, or any other volunteer opportunities, just let us know through comment in the chat. We could definitely use your help. So tonight we have got Dustin Huckabe, who, I want to get this right, Dustin, is the president of Students in Recovery.
That's right.
At the University of Oklahoma. So he is going to be visiting with us. If you're watching tonight, or if you watch this later, you're really lucky. I think a lot of Dustin. I think he's got some very valuable information. So I will send it over his way. We'll get this party started.
All right. Hello. First of all, I want to thank Parents for Helping Parents for allowing me to share a little bit about my experience, strength, and hope. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I haven't found it necessary to use alcohol or use any substances since May 26, 2011. And so I think today, I'm probably going to talk a little bit differently than maybe what you're used to. I'm going to share my experience on kind of what my family went through in my substance use disorder, and then transitioning into kind of high school and the idea of college. And I say the idea because at the time it was never an idea to go to school. So a little bit about that is that, I started using drugs and alcohol when I was 13 years old. And because of that, as you could imagine, it caused a lot of issues with my parents. I was definitely the topic of conversation most of the time. And not even just in my family, but, my friends' families of like, hey, you might want to kind of steer clear, of Dustin. He's kind of just going off the hinges or whatever they said. And I noticed that, and I just kind of I self-medicated, and that's what I did. And so, in my household, going to school was a means to an end. It was just get through middle school, just get through high school. And then maybe you can get a job somewhere doing something. So that's how it was when I was growing up. And, I had a lot of behavioral issues. I got into a lot of fights, with people in the neighborhood and people at the movie theaters. That was a thing to do when I was a kid. And, that's what I did. I was a very angry, hurt, kid. And the only thing that I knew how to solve that was to self-medicate, and that's exactly what I did. And so by the time I was 18, so let's see, 13 to 18, by the time I was 18 years old, I had gotten in trouble with the courts in Texas, and they placed me on 8 years of felony probation, 600 hours of community service, and a 3-month stint in a zero tolerance boot camp. And here's the delusion. The delusion is that I thought that was normal. I thought that was completely like normal in the world that I hung out in. And, but at the same time, it scared me too. And I saw the hurt in my mom's eyes. I saw the hurt in my stepfather's eyes and in my friend's eyes. And it's kind of just this washing of the hands type of thing, like Dustin hopefully figures it out. And so I had a hard time with that. And so anyway, I went to treatment in 2006 and learned a whole lot about myself, a lot about family dynamics and all the stuff that you learn in treatment. And that was great. And I got out and I went to 12-step program, and thought I was too young, and I thought I was, I wasn't ready to receive what they wanted to give me. And so anyway, I dabbled in that for a long time. And so my parents got a divorce, and I just remember feeling this hopelessness of I just want to be able to be there for my mom. I want to be able to be there to support her. I know that a lot of you folks that are listening are parents yourself. I'm a parent of 3 cats, so I don't have any children. But I understand now what my parents were going through during that time, and it was very destructive. And I also remember just wanting to be there for my mom, and I couldn't emotionally, I couldn't physically, I just could not show up as a son. And so I got in trouble with the law again, and they locked me up for 6 months, and I get out of there, and I hang out with my old friends again, kind of the same old story. And their drug use had escalated, and so I started to use heroin for the first time, and that lasted a few short months. And during that time, I witnessed a lot of things that I hope that no one ever has to witness. But even witnessing those things, it still didn't stop me from using. And so I go down that road, and I go to my mom, and I'm like, hey, can you send me to treatment? Right? This is what kind of like I've learned about what privilege is, right? Can I go to my mom and ask her to send me to treatment? My mom didn't have the money to send me to treatment. Doesn't mean my mom didn't love me, and it doesn't mean that my mom didn't care about me, but my mom knew that I knew where the answers were. And so her simple answer to me was, where the answers are. And I can't sit here and say that made me happy. I was a very angry kid that she said that. But I needed her to say that. I desperately needed her to say that. And so I went to a 12-step anonymous program, and I just stayed. And I stayed there, and I did everything that was suggested of me that they asked me to do, and to the best of my ability. It met me where I was at developmentally, and it just met me where I was at spiritually and emotionally. And I needed that kind of love and support. And so after a few years of being sober for a while, I met who is my now wife, Emma, and she was going to school. And so I was like, hey, like, I want to try to go back to school as well. I was working as a used car salesman, and I was god awful at selling cars. I'm not that kind of a person. I was just not good at it. So if you do sell cars, my hat's off to you. It's a hard job. So anyway, I started with one night class at a community college in San Antonio, and I sat in the front and I asked questions. And this was probably the first time I ever sat in the front without being in trouble in the classroom. And I asked questions that pertained to class, that didn't distract the teacher. And I think I got a B in that class, actually. And so Emma was in the process of transferring or looking for universities to go to, and she chose Texas Tech, and we moved to Lubbock, Texas. And I instantly became incredibly resentful at her for moving us to Lubbock. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it wasn't. It's not an oasis in the desert. It's far from that. And so anyway, I get there, and we get involved in the recovery community, and we hear about the center. Have you heard about the center? Have you heard about this? They give you scholarships for being sober. And, we kind of would just talk about it, and it was like, no, like, I've never heard of anything like that. And I definitely have never heard of anything that is going to give you a scholarship for being sober to go to a university. I'd never even known that was a possibility. So Emma is at school, and we're developing some friendships, and she applies to get into the center, and it's the Center of Addiction and Recovery Studies at Texas Tech. And she applied to get in, and they gave her a scholarship to get in. And during this time, I was working for a contract job, and that ended, and I was working for an outdoor adventure program. And I hope this is a shout out to Vincent Sanchez. I hope that he's watching this or will watch it. But he was this Wizard of Oz character in Lubbock, and kind of this being that was like, do you know Vince? Because he knows you. And it's like, how does he know me? And so he ended up calling me one day and offering me a job to be the director of an outdoor adventure program. And I say that with such a full heart, because that stuff doesn't happen to people like me, to give opportunities like that. And Vince strongly encouraged me to apply to the center. And I very reluctantly told him no many times, because school wasn't for me. School is hard for me, and I just didn't think that I was capable of doing something like that. So I ended up applying, and I got denied from Texas Tech. And the center 2 weeks later sent me an acceptance letter on a $1,200 scholarship that would override Texas Tech's denial. And then all of a sudden, I am a student at the University of Texas Tech. I'm thrown into a community of 125 students that are sober, and that work different recovery programs, but are living happy, productive lives as students, as parents, as sons, daughters, grandchildren, whatever it may be. And that was very conducive to my overall success in college, in school in general. It met me where I was at, much like when I first got sober. These folks met me exactly where I was at, and it was peer-to-peer support. And I also had the support of the institution, knowing that Texas Tech is backing what I'm doing. as well as the directors and the associate directors and the staff that staffed the center at Texas Tech showed me love, and they showed me support, and they said, if you're struggling, reach out, and we're here to help you. And I did, and I joined their student organization there, and had some leadership roles in that, and all the while I ended up going to Washington, D.C. for the Association of Recovery and Higher Education, ARHE for short. They kind of set standards and kind of just overlook collegiate recovery programs, and really not overlook, but they just kind of set standards and norms and have a strong mission for collegiate recovery programs and support collegiate recovery programs across the country. But I did not know that. And so I went to Washington, D.C., and my eyes were just wide open. I met so many different people from all over the country, and people that were appointed for the President of the United States, senators, and people that are movers and shakers in the recovery field, and scientists, and moms and dads, and all kinds of people, faculty and staff from universities. And I realized for the first time that this is much bigger than Texas Tech. At first, I just thought that Texas Tech has a big drinking problem, and they were trying to address that issue. But what I found out is that these programs have existed since the 1980s. And they support students, marginalized students, in their recovery, or if they're seeking recovery. And so I got back to Texas Tech, kind of just did my thing, was just living life. And Emma graduated with a chemical engineering degree, and she got a job up here in Oklahoma. And so we moved up to Oklahoma, and going from a robust community of 125 students to zero, to absolutely zero support for recovery, was very shocking to me. I was used to a robust community that supported my recovery, that supported me in my academics, to nothing. And so I reached out to folks at Texas Tech and was like, hey, man, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go on campus. I've been at Texas Tech for 2 years, and now I'm at this new university, and I don't know what to do. And so they were like, well, just try to find those students, try to create that same space. And so I thought about it and prayed about it. And so I did. And I created the Students in Recovery student organization, and then created the 12-step all recovery meetings that meets every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock in the Zaros School of Social Work. And so that journey began there. And then ARHE had sent out a Leadership Academy application. And so I was encouraged to join that. And so I applied, and I got in, and I had a year-long project that I needed to do. And so I was just thinking that I would just build off of the student organization and build off of the recovery meetings that we have on campus. And that turned into me meeting with anybody and everybody who would listen to me talk about collegiate recovery. I've met with numerous people at the university level, numerous people on the community level. It's how I got involved with Parents Helping Parents, and just talking to them about collegiate recovery. And so through that, I found a lot of research and found out that there's over 140 collegiate recovery programs across the country of all different shapes and sizes. And they're all, it's not just the University of Texas Tech. It's UT Austin, it's Baylor, TCU, Alabama, Rutgers. The list goes on and on and on. A ton, Vanderbilt. Just a ton of universities that have these. CU Boulder has them, just a bunch of them. And so a part of the Leadership Academy, they flew us out to Keystone, Colorado, where we met with over 300 students and faculty and staff from all over the country to come together to learn about leadership, to learn more about the collegiate recovery field, to learn about how different collegiate recovery programs interact with their students on their campus. And then we came home, and I ended up getting the National Collegiate Recovery National Student of the Year award. I probably totally butchered that. It's like a long award name. It's like the National Collegiate Recovery Student of the Year award. There we go. I ended up winning that through the work that we're doing at OU. And we flew up to Boston to receive that award, and more importantly, to be around folks that understand collegiate recovery, that understand that when these programs are well supported by the university, that students far surpass the host institution in GPAs, retention, and graduation rates. These students are the students that you want on campus. These are the resilient ones. These are the students that understand that this might be their second or third time around the block, and that this is it. And these are the students that are going to put themselves out there and advocate for recovery. They're going to advocate for their needs and for their peers. And I just kind of took that, and a part of that Leadership Academy is we had to present on our projects. And during that presentation, I was just blown away at the, I guess, dedication and the passion that drives these students, that drives people just like me to create a safe, sober environment on their college campus. And they did it by art and music and comedy shows and developing collegiate recovery programs and everything in between that. And it was just so inspiring. And so I came back and decided that, look, we've got to continue to meet with people. We've got to continue to educate people on collegiate recovery programs. And so I met with more people. And on September 27th, we're going to have a night of recovery at the University of Oklahoma and the Annie and Henry Zaro School of Social Work from 5 o'clock to 7:30. And I encourage anybody who's watching this video or will watch this video to come out. We're going to have a panelist it's going to consist of Tim Rabel, who is the executive director of the Association of Recovery in Higher Education, where the student org, Students in Recovery, raised enough money to be able to fly him down here so that community members can ask him questions, so that OU officials can ask him questions and voice their concerns so that he can help try to alleviate some of that and answer some of those questions. Next to him, we're going to have the district judge, Michael Tupper, who deals in the Cleveland County drug courts and have his experience on dealing with OU students who come and see him. Next to him, we're going to have J.D. Fennell, who is the executive director of Teen Recovery Solutions, Mission Academy. It's a sober high school here in the state of Oklahoma. And then we're going to have Adrian Gibbs, who is our OU SGA, Student Government Association president. And then we're going to have Max Verena, who is a student in long-term recovery. And I want to go back to J.D. Fennell's position. So I think a lot of the time is that parents are getting help for their kid, getting them treatment, stuff like that, but they're maybe still in high school. And the question is, what happens after high school, right? Maybe they are at Mission Academy, or maybe they're at Archway, or maybe they're at somewhere that supports their recovery. And then after they graduate, the question is, now what? And so that's what these collegiate recovery programs do. They foster a safe, sober environment on a relatively hostile environment, which is university campuses. And they provide a safe environment for them to be able to thrive in, to feel supported and to feel encouraged in, to have that peer-to-peer support going through their college career. A lot of times some people's drinking careers start in college and they fail out. One of the biggest retention failures is substance use disorder, and people fail out, students fail out and parents will ask, well, where do we go now? Now they're in treatment, but they want to finish their degree. Where do we go? And so what they do is they find collegiate recovery programs all over the country that supports their academics and their recovery. Because I'm a firm believer that if you don't support the underlying condition, if you're not conducive of supporting the underlying condition, then everything else is not going to fall into place. If you can provide a safe, sober environment that is conducive, now it's not treatment, but it is a safe environment that fosters their recovery, that helps support their recovery so that they in turn can focus on their academics. And it's an investment in that student so that they in turn can invest in their social capital. And so that they can be productive members of society. And so I'm by no means an expert in collegiate recovery. I am a student that comes from one of the most robust collegiate recovery communities in the country. And I'm just speaking from my experience. And I've done a little bit of research, and, when we look at a university like the University of Oklahoma, you're looking at about, in 2019, we had about 26,000 students enroll on our campus. And when you do when you put the data together and you put the math together, you find out that there's about 400 or so students that are fitting substance use dependency on our campus. And so we want to be able to support those students. We just passed a bill or a law. I don't know if it's a law or a bill, but we just passed the sale of alcohol at football games, which our last president said will enhance our fan experience. And I'm a firm believer in that. It will enhance our fan experience, and it'll be great for those fans that can indulge in that. But what about the students that can't? What about the students that find themselves in harm's way, or find themselves that they cannot control what they're drinking? And so are we not going to enhance the student experience at the same time? And so that's my kind of call to the university, is that if we're going to make a focus on bringing in revenue from the sales of alcohol, why don't we use some of that revenue to support collegiate recovery programs? Why don't we use that revenue to support our prevention services and intervention services and things like that, and at the same time, when you look at the money value, the collegiate recovery programs have the potential of saving the university starting at about $200,000 a year just on retention rates, just on keeping kids in college, So that's the thing, is that, I feel like some universities, if they're not doing this, they're missing out on a piece of revenue, right? And you can't be afraid to talk about revenue. You can't be afraid to talk about the money piece, because that's a part of it. But the thing that I want to, get across to parents, if you're listening, or teenagers, if you're listening, or anybody who's even thinking about going back to college, is that there is a student organization at the University of Oklahoma. It was doing its very best to provide a safe, sober environment for students now and for students to come. And these collegiate recovery programs do that. Like I said, they've been around since the 1980s, starting at Texas Tech, Rutgers, and Brown, and they're flourishing all over the country. And some are even taking them abroad. So if you have any questions, if you're concerned, you have any concerns or anything like that, leave a comment. I know that I'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns or whatever you may have now or in the future.
Yeah, so we'll open it up just for some questions. If people have questions for Dustin about the story, about recovery, about collegiate recovery, go ahead and ask those. I've got a couple teed up already for you, Dustin. What makes recovery so difficult on a collegiate campus?
Well, that's a great question, right? So what makes it difficult is that universities, not just now, but the history of universities, college campuses, are that it might be the first time people go to drink, and that's the environment that it brings. It brings a party atmosphere. It brings drinking. It brings experimenting with drugs. And I think that going back to trying to provide a safe, sober environment in a hostile environment is that it takes administration to understand that that's what the university culture is. Like, for instance, this was like a year ago. I was driving down to campus every day, and there was a huge billboard that said Bud Light on it, and it said the University of Oklahoma, right? So I'm a student in recovery driving down I-35, and I see this gigantic billboard every single day, and my university supports Bud Light, which is fine. But what about these marginalized students? There's no billboard for them. There's not even a collegiate recovery program. There's not even dedicated space for them. So what about those folks? And that's what I think makes it difficult, is that that's the culture that's there, you know?
What kind of one piece of advice, one statement would you give to a college student struggling with a substance use disorder?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to try to seek out recovery support on your campus. You know, like I said, there's 140 of these across the country. It's a lot. But in the big scheme of things, a huge big scheme of things, it's not. And so I think for those folks that are struggling with substance use disorder, to ask for help, and to ask, you know, maybe their advisors, you know, are there any universities, you know, that I could go to that supports recovery, you know, or what can I do to have this kind of recovery piece, but also, you know, this academic piece, so that I don't have to withdraw, right? So that I don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You know, I don't have to go to treatment and then withdraw and then go through that whole deal about, can I get back in? You know, where do I go? So I think the biggest advice that I have is don't be afraid to ask for help. There are students on your campus, hopefully, that are trying to advocate or that do have some type of recovery space. And so I do want to say, too, is that, you know, like the University of Oklahoma didn't create substance use dependency. It didn't create the opioid epidemic. It didn't create this problem. But I think at the same time, there is a call of action to step up, in a sense, to say, okay, if these things have existed since the 1980s, and there are in over 140 universities across the country, then obviously universities have been able to navigate this and be able to implement collegiate recovery programs. We should be able to do that because we are so far behind the curve and we shouldn't be. We should be in front of the curve. We should establish one of the most robust collegiate recovery programs that has ever existed. And I can tell you from my work about getting into the community, there is a huge community that supports collegiate recovery, a huge community that supports students that are in recovery or seeking recovery. And so that's my call to action, is that I hope that something gets done. I mean, I understand that the university is kind of going through some financial issues and going through a new president and going through an unprecedented amount of layoffs. But I will say that even with all of that, students are being caught in the middle, right? Students should come first. If you still have a job there, you can advocate for these programs. You can educate yourself on these programs and understand that, one, it brings money to the university, not just by retention, but also when you look at like recovery housing, that's what some collegiate recovery programs offer, is recovery sober dorms, right? You can live on campus and live in a section of student housing that is dedicated for sobriety, for people that are in recovery. And I say recovery from anything: eating disorders, gambling, sex, alcohol, drugs. I mean, any of those types of things. So I just wanted to preface that and throw it out there, that we're not sitting here shaming OU or shaming any university that doesn't have one. I'm just encouraging you to do your due diligence and look heavily into these programs and implementing it so that these marginalized students' voices are heard.
What can the community at large do to help support a student recovery program? Specifically yours, but in general, what can the community do to support?
Well, I think doing things like this. I think having dialogue. I think having conversations about it. I think having folks like Parents Helping Parents, have conversations around recovery support services in higher education. It's my belief that there should be a collegiate recovery program in every university and every college and every community college in the country. That's my belief. Why not? Right? And so in order to get there, we have to have conversations like this. We have to have community gatherings like the one that we're going to have on September 27th at the School of Social Work. And we're going to have community members there. Oklahoma Senator Mary Bourne will be moderating that for us. And so, looking at the legislative aspects and looking at local treatment facilities and getting out there and talking to them about these services and what they do. And I think just educating yourself, and just knowing that they exist. Because when I got to Lubbock, I didn't know they existed. I had no idea that they were even around. And I was, I'm 30 now. So I'm 31. That's crazy. So when I got to Texas Tech, I was in my 20s. And so I had no idea that these programs existed and why not, right? Like I had gone to IOP, I had gone to treatment, I had gone to these things, and no one ever mentioned collegiate recovery to me. No one ever said, hey, Dustin, there's these programs that will give you a scholarship just for being sober that can help you in school. Now, I don't know if I would have been willing to go, but just having the knowledge that they're there, maybe years down the road, I would have thought about, oh, there's these collegiate recovery programs. I wonder what that looks like, And so I think that's part of the barriers. I just think that we need to have more and more and more conversations about it.
How do people stay in touch with your organization and get more information about upcoming things that you guys are doing in the morning?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you can go on Facebook and type in Students in Recovery and click the like button on there, and you'll start following our Facebook page. And then you can also follow us on Instagram if you do Instagram, and that's students_in_recovery. And you can find us on Instagram, and you can shoot us an email at studentsinrecovery.ou@gmail.com. And we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. You can even go onto the OU Health Services website, and under Health Promotions, there's a tab. So click on the tab Health Promotions, and then there's a tab for Recovery. Click that tab, and that gives you a little description of what we do and when we meet. And that's at the OU Health Services website.
So what's the one thing that you would like to say maybe to a parent of a college student who's struggling with a substance use disorder?
Yeah, that you're not alone, right? And I think that's one of the biggest things is the isolation and feeling like that this problem is happening to you only. And I want to say that you're not alone in that feeling that there are recovery support services, communities all across the country that supports that. And so I would say to them is to come out if you can to Parents Helping Parents. They have meetings in Norman, Oklahoma City, and Edmond, and they're trying to get one started up in Tulsa. And I would encourage you to come out to one of their meetings. They're very informative. They're very useful for parents that are going through that, and to meet other parents that have gone through that. And you kind of create this community for yourself, this healthy community for yourself. And it's anonymous. You don't have to let people know who you are. That's why they started the webinar meetings and things like that. You can come and kind of sit in the back if you want to. Parents understand the shame and the guilt that they may take on. And maybe they think it's their fault, and I'm here to tell you that it's not, and that there are services, at least in the state of Oklahoma, that is trying desperately to get your attention, to let you know that you're not alone. So that's why they've kind of created these online platforms to reach people that are in the rural areas and kind of all over the state of Oklahoma, so that they can feel supported if they don't have the means to get to an actual meeting. But that's what I would say, is that there's a lot of support out there.
All right, so me and Dustin are going to share an awkward, quiet moment while we do a last call for anybody that's got questions or comments. We did have somebody comment and just kind of say thank you for your story and for everything that you're doing in collegiate recovery. And they shared a personal experience about knowing someone at the university that had died of an overdose when their daughter was in school there, and that it's just much needed. It was just kind of a thank you comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So final call for any questions or comments for Dustin Huckabe, Students in Recovery. This is the awkward moment.
Yeah, this is it.
I need some romantic music or something.
We just sit here and see if anyone asks questions. And I know there was a lot of information that gets thrown at folks that are watching and listening. And I probably spoke pretty quickly about it. But yeah, ask some questions. If you can't think of any questions, shoot us an email at studentsinrecovery.ou@gmail.com. Come out on September 27th. And we're going to be posting flyers in an event on our Facebook page in the upcoming days. So be sure to register yourself. It's a free event. There's no cost to it. You just got to show up. And I encourage you, if you're a parent, to come out and ask these panelists, some questions, and especially ask Tim some questions, and meet other folks in the community to get connected. So that you feel supported in what you're going through. So,
all right, Dustin, thanks for being here.
Absolutely,
brother. It's always a pleasure. Every time I get a chance to sit down with you. So I'm going to click this over to me, and here's what I'm going to say real quick. I recently read something online that I think applies to both Dustin's organization with Students in Recovery and for Parents Helping Parents. So this is kind of a double whammy, food for thought. It was just a real simple post that somebody put on Facebook saying, here's how you can support someone's small business. Now, these aren't really small businesses. These are community outreach organizations, but the same thing applies. Here's what we need people to do to support. Both organizations need your money, but I'm not going to ask for any money. So even outside of that, here's what organizations need. They need you to follow their social media pages, and they need you to like and share their content. And if that's all you do, you are helping Students in Recovery. You are helping Parents Helping Parents, because you're helping us deliver our message to more people, and that's what we really want, right? And those are free things. It's free to go to Facebook and like Students in Recovery. It's free to like the stuff that they share, and it's free to reshare their content. And you can do the same thing for Parents Helping Parents, and that more than anything will be a big help. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks everybody we have a lot of people that watch after the fact, not live. So thank you for all those people as well. If you've got questions or comments, you can contact us on the web, parentshelpingparents.info. You can get with Students in Recovery on Facebook. Appreciate it. So our next meeting is going to be on August 19th, same time, 7 p.m. And we will have Karen Mannix on, who was supposed to be our very first one. If you guys remember when we started way back in May, we got tornadoed out that night. Karen was supposed to be our speaker, so she's coming back in. You don't want to miss that. She's going to be talking about, I think the title of her talk is "There's More Than One Way to Get to Denny's, Staying Open-Minded in Recovery." So Karen's been around a long time. She has a wealth of information and knowledge, and I know that you guys are going to enjoy that one as well. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.